I want to look at one other issue that is going to be promoted at this summit. It's about climate education and why it isn't taught in school. Recent studies in the UK show an increasing number of parents want it to be taught in the classroom. In the US, a poll shows 3/4 of teachers agreed that climate change is needed, but don't feel equipped to teach it. Well, our prospective guest this morning is Sagarika Sriram, who's at COP28 campaigning to put climate on the syllabus. First of all, good to talk to you. Tell us your story, because this is something that you have been dedicated to promoting, campaigning for quite a while.
Hi, thank you for having me. So my story began when I was 10 years old, and I just completed a course on HTML web design and coding. And then for that course, I had to create a final project, which was a website. And then around the same time at school, I was sort of learning a little bit about the climate crisis, but nothing in detail. And I started doing my own research, and I started looking into things, watching documentaries and things like that. And I came across this one documentary by National Geographic on the impacts of plastic pollution in our oceans. And I think as a 10-year-old, that really did struck me, because it sort of felt like I was watching my Earth. It was breaking down. So turtles were getting stuck in plastic bags. Whales washing up with plastic bottles in their belly, things like that was a lot for me to handle. And I decided to do something. So I created Kids for a Better World, which was my online platform to educate the youth so that nobody else had to feel helpless like I did in that moment. I wanted to use an incentive scheme so that children could complete these activities on a daily basis and learn that sustainability is a way of life. And they really did have to make a difference if they wanted to see, prospective changes in the future.
Take us to now, where that journey has taken you. You've just been named as one of the most influential women on the planet, according to the latest BBC poll of 100 women, so congratulations for that. Tell me what difference you think it's making. I know there are some governments looking to make education, put it on the syllabus. Italy did a few years ago before the pandemic, and suddenly it spluttered and nothing happened. Where is it having an impact?
So I think at the end of the day, you're not going to see immediate impact, because obviously climate education is directed towards children. So the aim of it is to make sure that children are taught the necessary skills so they can grow up in a world and adapt to the changes that are happening on our planet. At the same time, they need to be taught that the climate crisis is something that affects you in all different industries. It's not a fact that's only in biology or geography and things like that. There are so many different aspects to climate change that you really need to learn how to combat those, regardless of what you're studying, regardless of what you're doing. And I know I've seen it firsthand, especially in Dubai and the UAE, where there is so much more knowledge within the youth. And obviously that has contributed to why this COP28 is so inclusive and includes us in decisions and discussions, is because you can really see the change that's happened. I know when I started in 2016, I found it hard getting through to anybody. There were a few organizations, but a lot of other people just weren't aware of what was going on our planet. And I think now you can see what the 80,000 people at COP28, and you can very much see the change that is happening with the youth. I know here locally, I have my network of advocates for climate change and sustainability that has happened. And yeah, there is definitely a lot of widespread change and a community of people that has developed over the past few years.
What is the barrier? I mean, I mentioned that teachers around the world, particularly the US poll, saying that they don't feel educated enough themselves to be able to educate on climate change, and that's part of the problem. So what barriers are you facing, and why we're not seeing the UK, France, Kenya, countries around the world deciding, okay, yeah, it's easy to implement?
I think there's a lack of focus on it. I mean, I do genuinely believe there should be a lot more focus directed towards the climate crisis, but people tend to, it's a very wish-washy subject in schools specifically. Like I said earlier, people tend to believe that there aren't a lot of aspects to it, and it is very much directed in just that one, biology, geography aspect. And I think once you sort of break past the idea that there are so many different ways to understand the climate crisis, and it's a lot deeper once you scratch the surface, people do take the initiative to educate themselves, and people do understand that it's such a deep subject that needs to be taught. And it is a necessity at the end of the day, the same way, basic life skills, safety, things like that. The climate crisis is something we need to be taught and we need to learn, and we need to teach the future generations to learn to adapt to that. I think once you do see these decisions and these changes on a large scale happening, hopefully at COP28, we will see these very big decisions and negotiations happening. That does lead towards other changes happening on a global level.
How much of a stumbling block do you think it is? You're there, you talked about open voices, you're a Dubai resident, you've grown up within the system, and yet you hear this week that Sultan Al Jaber, the president host of the summit, accused of trying to make side deals, basically oil deals on the side, which he said, no, these are false allegations. How much is taking the wind out of your sails in trying to achieve what you want to achieve there?
I think at the end of the day, COP28 is a space which this year is focused on inclusivity, and there is a lot of discussions and that are happening. So whatever world leaders may end up doing, it is up to us as the youth and as people attending COP28 to push against that and do what we can. There is so much space and opportunity to really make a difference here. And I think especially growing up here, I have been seeing the impact that the UAE has been making in terms of sustainability and really striving towards achieving those goals. And I do think COP28 will really be that space to figure out and really understand where we are going with that. At the end of the day, you will always face these obstacles when it comes to climate decision making. But we are working towards, as a community of youth advocates and environmentalists, we are working towards moving past that and coming up with constructive developments in the climate space.
Sagarika, a few years ago, just get your brief response on this. I remember I spoke to Greta Thunberg at the COP summit in Madrid. She was full of hope. She thought there could be a change. This year, she said, I'm not going. It's blah, blah, blah. Do you feel differently?
I do. I think this year is pivotal in the fact that it's the first COP which is completely and truly inclusive. I think as someone who is a member of the youth community of advocates for climate change, I'm privileged to be having such a position at COP28. And it is that one chance where I feel like I am being heard. I know as growing up in the UAE, there has been a lot of progress being made towards involving the youth in decision-making and discussions. And I do think that this is at the heart of that. I do agree with Greta that there is, right now with what the developments that are being made and what is being heard, that it does seem to be a little bit wish-washy in terms of whether you will actually see final conclusions coming out of it.
Yeah.
But I think you walk into COP28 with hope that including all these different aspects and stakeholders in the climate discussion will lead to large-scale change. And I would like to go in with that mindset. So,
Sagarika, good luck with your campaign. Sagarika Sriram, and trying to get education on the map in all schools. Thank you.